The man at the glass door. The office building was tall, wide, and covered in glass. People walked past it every day without looking up. It was just another building in the city. But on that morning, something unusual was about to happen. Not dramatic, not loud, but something that would ripple through every floor, touch every heart, and quietly shift lives forever. Keanu Reeves stepped out of a black sedan parked at the edge of the sidewalk. He wore a simple black jacket and jeans. No entourage, no bodyguards, no cameras. He looked like a man who had lost something or maybe someone. In his left hand, he held a plain brown envelope. In his right, a cup of coffee he hadn't touched. His eyes were a little tired and his steps a little slow. He was supposed to be there for a quick business meeting, but deep inside, something told him this visit was about more than a meeting. As he approached the front doors, a security guard held one open. The man was tall, maybe in his 40s, and his uniform was perfectly pressed. His name tag read Omar. His posture was firm, respectful, but it was his eyes that stood out. Calm, deep, like they carried stories from other places, other times. Keanu nodded politely. "Thanks, man," he said. Omar smiled warmly and said something softly. It wasn't English, it was something else, a language Keanu couldn't place. Keanu paused. "What was that?" Omar chuckled a little. "Just said welcome, in Tagalog." Keanu raised an eyebrow. "Tagalog? You speak Tagalog?" Omar nodded. "Yes, sir, among others." Keanu tilted his head. "How many?" Omar hesitated, like he didn't want to show off. "9, I guess." Keanu blinked. "9? Seriously?" Omar gave a modest nod. "Just grew up around a lot of different people. Learned a few things along the way." Keanu stood there for a moment. The busy lobby behind him buzzed with life. People, passing, talking, phones ringing. But he didn't move. Something about Omar intrigued him. The way he said it like it was nothing. The way his voice stayed soft, as if humility was his native tongue. Keanu glanced at his watch. He was early for the meeting. He looked back at Omar. "Can I ask, what languages do you speak?" Omar smiled, a bit shy now. "English, Tagalog, Arabic, Urdu, Spanish, Swahili, Russian, French, and Japanese. Some are rusty, but I manage." Keanu let out a low whistle. "That's not normal. You should be doing something way bigger than standing at a glass door." Omar shrugged. "Maybe, but I like it here. People walk in stressed, angry, distracted. I like giving them a smile. I like being the calm part of their day." That sentence hit Keanu deeper than expected. He looked around. Everyone walked past Omar like he was invisible, like he was just a wall between them and their offices. No one asked his name. No one looked him in the eye. Keanu did. "Have you always worked here?" he asked. "Almost 4 years now," Omar replied. "Used to do night shifts, then moved to mornings. Better for my son." Keanu caught that last part. "You have a kid?" Omar nodded. "Yeah, 8 years old, smart, kind, stubborn like his mom." Keanu smiled faintly. "You raise him alone?" Omar paused. There was a flicker of something behind his eyes. "Yeah, his mom passed 2 years ago. We're getting by." Keanu didn't know what to say for a second. "I'm sorry." Omar gave a gentle nod. "Thank you." The lobby lights reflected off the glass behind them. People kept coming and going. No one noticed the conversation unfolding just feet from the revolving doors. No one knew that two very different lives, one of fame, the other of quiet endurance, had just found a connection. Keanu finally stepped forward but turned back once more. "What's your son's name?" "Zane. Beautiful name," Keanu said. Then he walked inside, but something stayed in his mind. He couldn't shake Omar's face, his voice, his story. During the meeting, while the executives pitched ideas and discussed numbers, Keanu found himself distracted. His thoughts kept drifting back to the man who spoke 9 languages, but chose to greet people at a door. He thought about the phrase Omar used, I like being the calm part of their day. After the meeting, Keanu came back to the lobby. This time, Omar was helping an elderly woman find her way to an elevator. He spoke to her in French. Her face lit up like a candle. She smiled, laughed, touched his arm with gratitude. Keanu waited. When Omar returned, he looked surprised. Back so soon? Omar asked. Keanu leaned against the wall. I've been in 100 buildings like this, but today felt different. Omar looked curious. Why? Because of you? Omar seemed unsure what to say. Keanu continued. You don't just open doors, Omar. You open hearts. Most people don't even know they're holding them shut. Omar looked away, uncomfortable. But Keanu wasn't done. Have you ever wanted to teach? Or do something with all those languages? Omar chuckled. Sure, but I don't have the degrees. Or time. Single dad, remember? Keanu smiled gently. What if someone helped? Omar's expression shifted slowly. What do you mean? I mean, Keanu said, stepping closer, lowering his voice. What if someone gave you the chance to teach? Maybe to kids, or to people who need a fresh start. Omar looked at him like he wasn't sure if he was serious. Why me? Because, Keanu replied, you didn't wait to be important before helping people. You're already doing it, Omar, and the world needs more of that. Just then, the building manager came over looking nervous. He had clearly recognized Keanu and didn't know what to make of the long conversation. Mr. Reeves, the manager, said, Is everything okay? Keanu turned. Yeah, everything's perfect. In fact, he looked back at Omar. I want to speak with your HR director. The manager blinked. May I ask why? I have a proposal, Keanu said, calmly. And it starts with this man right here. Omar looked stunned. But Keanu just smiled and said softly, You've been the calm part of people's day long enough. Maybe it's time you became the voice that helps them find their own. And right then, before Omar could respond, a phone buzzed loudly. It was Omar's. He picked it up and turned pale. Zane's school, he whispered. There's been an incident. Keanu's face changed instantly. What happened? Omar looked at the phone screen with wide, panicked eyes. They said he collapsed. Ambulance is already there. The lobby noise faded behind the weight of those words. Keanu didn't think twice. Come on, he said. We're going together. They ran for the door, the glass closing slowly behind them as the story took a sharp turn toward something no one expected. The boy with the drawing, the car raced through the city streets, weaving between traffic, its tires whispering against the asphalt. Keanu was behind the wheel, his hand steady but his heart heavy. Beside him, Omar sat rigid, his fingers clutched tightly around his phone as if it could pull him into another reality where none of this was happening. His lips moved in silent prayer. The city outside blurred by, but inside the vehicle, time felt frozen. Not a word was spoken for the first few minutes, just the quiet rhythm of urgency and fear. Keanu finally broke the silence. He's a strong kid, he said gently, trying to offer something more than silence. He's got you. That already means more than you know. Omar nodded slowly but didn't answer. His mind was with his son, Zane, who that morning had been healthy, laughing and waving from the window as Omar left for work. He always did that, every single morning. And now this call. The voice from the school nurse had been calm, but firm. Your son fainted. During class, paramedics are on site. Please come immediately. When they arrived at the hospital, the reception was in chaos. Crying children, worried parents, buzzing phones. But Omar moved straight to the counter, speaking fast. The woman at the desk looked confused, flustered. She kept checking the screen, looking for Zane's name. I'm his father, Omar said, again. Zane Amin, 8 years old. He was brought in just minutes ago, from Eastwood Elementary. Before she could respond, a nurse appeared through the side doors holding a clipboard and looking around. Zane Amin's father? She called out. Omar rushed to her. Yes, I'm his father. Follow me, she said quickly, motioning. Them both. Keanu stayed close behind, not willing to let Omar face it alone. They were led down a hallway that felt too long. The nurse finally stopped in front of a small room with a window. Inside, Zane lay on a hospital bed. Pale. Wires attached to his chest. An oxygen mask gently covering his mouth. A small stuffed lion sat by his side, the one Omar had given him on his 6th birthday. The sight of it broke something inside Omar. What happened to him? Omar asked, voice cracking. The nurse sighed. We believe it's a neurological event, maybe a seizure. The doctors are running tests. He's stable now, but we need to understand the cause. Omar leaned his head against the glass. He didn't cry. He just stood there, breathing slowly, absorbing it all. Keanu placed a hand on his shoulder, not to comfort, but to simply say, I'm here. Later, when they were allowed inside, Omar sat beside Zane, holding his tiny hand between his own. Keanu sat on a chair across the room, quietly observing. He didn't speak unless spoken to. He just watched the way Omar's eyes studied every inch of his son's face, like memorizing it in case it disappeared. Minutes passed. Maybe hours. No one counted. Then something unexpected happened. A nurse entered with a plastic bag and handed it to Omar. These were his belongings, she said. Omar opened it slowly. Inside were Zane's school things, a lunchbox, a pencil case, and a folded piece of paper. He pulled the paper out carefully and opened it. It was a drawing, not neat or perfect, drawn with colored pencils, the lines crooked, but full of emotion. It showed 2 people standing side by side, one tall, one small. The tall one wore a security guard's hat. The small one had a lion in his hand. At the top, written in childish letters, were the words, "My hero is my Baba." Omar stared at it for a long time. He didn't speak, didn't move. He just held the drawing in both hands, like it was a fragile thing made of glass and truth. Keanu leaned forward. Can I see it? Omar handed it to him wordlessly. Keanu looked at the picture, and his throat tightened. He had met hundreds of men in his life, actors, businessmen, leaders, but none had been called a hero by their child in such pure, unfiltered terms. Not like this. This wasn't admiration for fame or power. It was love. Deep, honest, unconditional love. Keanu set the drawing on his lap and looked at Omar. You know, people say I'm a hero because of movies. But this is the real thing. Omar wiped his eyes for the first time. I just try to do my best every day. No one sees it, but he does. Keanu nodded. And that's what matters. A knock at the door interrupted them. A young doctor stepped in, holding a tablet. Mr. Amin, he said softly. We think we may have found something. Omar stood immediately. What is it? The doctor showed the screen. Zane has a small growth pressing near his temporal lobe, likely benign. It might have triggered the collapse. We'll need more scans to be certain, but it's treatable. With the right care, he'll be okay. Omar's knees gave out slightly and he gripped the side of the bed for balance. We'll help him, the doctor added, reassuring. We just need your approval to begin the procedures. Omar nodded without hesitation. Do whatever you need to do, please. The doctor left to prepare the team. As silence returned to the room, Omar looked at Keanu. I don't even know how to pay for all this. Keanu stood slowly, folded the drawing gently, and placed it back in Omar's hands. Let me help, he said. Not because I feel sorry, but because your son believes in a world where kindness matters. I want to live in that world too. Omar shook his head. I can't accept, but Keanu raised a hand to stop him. This isn't charity. This is gratitude for reminding me what real strength looks like. They sat there together for a long time as the hospital lights dimmed slightly into evening mode. Zane stirred in his bed once, then again. Finally, his eyes opened just a little. Omar rushed to his side. Hey, he whispered. I'm here, Zane. Zane blinked, barely awake, and said something soft. No one could understand it at first. Omar leaned closer. What is it, Baba? Zain smiled faintly and whispered. That man, he's the one from the movies. The one with the pencil. And the suit. Keanu laughed gently. You know about that, huh? Zain nodded, eyes closing again. Omar looked at Keanu. He's watched all your movies, says you never give up. Keanu looked at Zain, then at Omar. He's the real reason I won't. The moment was fragile. Gentle. But just then, something outside the hospital room caught Keanu's attention. A woman arguing with a nurse. She was pointing angrily, her voice rising. The nurse looked helpless. Keanu stood and walked out to check. As he approached, he overheard the woman say, I told you I'm here to pick up the files, we already paid. The nurse was trying to explain protocol, but the woman wasn't listening. Keanu tapped her shoulder. Ma'am, is everything okay? The woman turned, about to shout again, but stopped when she saw who he was. You, she gasped, startled. Keanu nodded. Maybe we can calm down and figure it out together. But as the woman hesitated, something fell from her bag. A file. It spilled open. And inside were several names, including Zain's. And beside each name, a number and a word. Experimental candidate. Keanu's eyes narrowed. What is this? The woman looked panicked. Nothing. It's just school paperwork. But Keanu knew better. And in that moment, everything shifted, because it wasn't just a collapse. Something was happening behind the scenes. And somehow, Zain, Omar's son, was in the middle of it. A language. They couldn't read. Keanu picked up the folder slowly, carefully, as if it might burn or break in his hands. The woman, dressed in a stiff blazer, her hair pinned tight, stepped forward quickly to grab it back, but he took a quiet step back and raised a calm hand. I think we need to talk about this, he said softly. Her eyes darted to the side, to the security camera on the ceiling, then back to Keanu. That file's private, she snapped. Confidential medical data. You're not authorized to see it. But Keanu didn't blink. He had seen too many scripts, too many games in Hollywood and in real life, to not recognize the tone of someone trying to hide something. This file, he said, flipping through the pages, lists children, not just Zain, 23 of them, and each has a red-coded note, not medical terms, numbers, letters, abbreviations, and something else. He pointed to a strange symbol next to Zain's name. It wasn't English. In fact, it didn't look like any written language he had ever seen. You want to tell me why a kid who just fainted in class is listed under Phase B candidates for something marked as indirect response calibration? The woman's face paled. You don't understand what this is. It's research. It's for the good of the children. They volunteered. Keanu tilted his head. Zain is 8. He didn't volunteer for anything. Her lips tightened. His father signed the form. He may not remember, but it's legal. From behind him, Keanu heard footsteps. Omar had come out, worry written all over his face. What's going on? He asked. Keanu turned slowly. Omar, did you sign anything at Zain's school? Anything about medical trials or programs? Omar's brows furrowed. No, never. The woman jumped in. You did. At the parent-teacher night, there was a release form for a learning development study. You signed it. Omar looked shocked. They told me it was a language development program, just surveys, no tests, no drugs, no machines. Keanu's voice lowered. Omar, they lied. The woman's face hardened. You don't understand. The children who scored highest on early comprehension were selected for something new, something advanced. Your son scored off the charts. He reacts to language differently. You should be proud. Omar stepped forward, voice trembling. He's in a hospital bed right now, hooked to machines. And you're telling me I should be proud? This was never supposed to happen, she said. We've done this before. Keanu raised his voice slightly, sharp like steel. No. You experimented before. And now someone's child is hurt. The woman turned suddenly and walked away fast. Too fast. Keanu looked at Omar. We're not letting this go. Omar stared at the papers in Keanu's hands, particularly the symbol next to Zain's name. That's not a language I know, he said quietly. Keanu nodded. Me neither. They went back into the hospital room. Zane was resting, but a nurse had left a tablet on the table, showing basic vitals and some of the results from the preliminary scan. Keanu looked at it closely. The test logs were full of codes. Several entries showed the same symbol they had just seen in the file. Omar, he said, you told me you speak 9 languages. Do any of these codes make sense to you? Omar studied them. His eyes scanned each symbol, each row. No, but wait. He leaned forward, brows tightening. This symbol, he said, pointing. It keeps appearing after something called response delay. In Urdu, there's a word, jawab der, that means delayed answer, and this might be someone's crude abbreviation. Keanu looked closer. Like someone trying to measure reaction to words or to sound. Omar stood up slowly. They're not just studying how he speaks. They're studying how he understands. Keanu's thoughts raced. Zane was bright, observant, and deeply connected to language, just like his father. But there was something else happening, something deeper. These experiments weren't about helping children read better. They were about triggering something. They took the folder and left the hospital with Zane resting under the care of a trusted nurse. The hospital agreed not to discharge him without Omar's direct approval. Keanu had made sure of that with a single phone call. His name carried weight, but his conviction carried more. Later that night, back at Omar's small apartment, they sat in silence at the kitchen table. The walls were lined with children's art. The fridge was covered in sticky notes with English, Spanish, and Urdu vocabulary. One read, "Kindness is the same in every language." Omar poured them both tea. His hands were still shaking. How could they lie like that? Use kids? Keanu looked down at the folder again. Because they know most people won't ask questions, and the few who do get buried under paper. Omar looked at him seriously. But you asked. You didn't walk away. Keanu nodded slowly. Because something about your son, something about you. It reminded me why I started doing this, not the movies, not the fame, but the moments between. The people. Omar sighed. We have to stop this. We will, Keanu said. But we need help. Someone who understands this symbol. Someone who knows this code. Omar thought for a long moment. Then his eyes lit up. I might know someone. He went into the other room and came back with an old, worn leather notebook. Inside were names, phone numbers, and notes written in different scripts. Arabic, Chinese, Hindi, French. He flipped to a page near the back. I met her 5 years ago, Omar said. She was a language archivist, worked for a forgotten dialect project. She studied ancient languages, even the ones not spoken anymore. Keanu leaned closer. You think she could read this? If anyone could, it's her. They made the call. She answered after 2 rings. Omar? Her voice came through with surprise and warmth. Is that really you? Yes, Amara. I need your help. It's about something strange. Something that doesn't make sense. Within the hour, she was at the apartment. She was older than Omar remembered, maybe late 50s, but her eyes were sharp and full of fire. When Omar showed her the file, she sat back slowly. This, she whispered. This isn't a language. Keanu frowned. Then what is it? It's a command pattern. A what? Omar asked. Amara pointed to the symbol. This isn't meant to be read. It's meant to trigger. It's based on sound, tone, emotional context. I've seen something like it in a blacklisted project about cognitive conditioning. Keanu felt cold. Are you saying they're using this on children? Amara nodded. Yes. And if your son reacted physically, then his brain might be unusually responsive. They weren't studying him. They were activating something inside him, Omar whispered. They used him like a key. Amara looked at them both. And now, they won't stop. Keanu stood up. Then we don't stop either. He walked to the window and stared out at the city. It looked normal. Lights, buildings, cars. But behind those walls were people who hid things, who manipulated innocence in the name of research, power, or something worse. But this time they picked the wrong child, and they didn't know the man standing at the glass door was no ordinary guard, nor did they know the man standing beside him was Keanu Reeves. The storm was coming. The unspoken code. The next morning came slowly. The city stirred to life with its usual rhythm, horns blaring, footsteps echoing on pavement, coffee brewing in quiet kitchens. But inside Omar's apartment, time moved differently. The light through the window didn't feel like hope. It felt like a test, like the dawn of something far bigger than either of them had imagined. Keanu sat at the kitchen table, sipping tea that had gone cold hours ago. His eyes were fixed on Zane's drawing, still folded neatly beside the folder. The words, "My hero is my Baba," stared back at him like a promise. In the soft early light, those crayon lines looked like they held more power than any blueprint or contract he had ever signed. Omar stood by the window, arms crossed, face tense. The night had given no rest, only questions. "We can't go to the press," Omar said finally. "They'll shut it down, twist it, make me look like a desperate father chasing shadows." Keanu nodded slowly. "They own the silence, but maybe we speak in a different way." Amara arrived just after sunrise, carrying a small black case. She placed it on the table, opened it, and pulled out a thin silver device the size of a notepad. "I use this in the field," she said. "It scans for sonic frequency markers. It might help us identify what triggered Zane's reaction. If we can isolate the sound patterns, we can prove this isn't just a medical issue, it's intentional." Omar looked nervous. "How will we know if it's the right one?" Amara met his eyes. "If it makes your skin crawl and your ears ring before the machine even reacts, then you found it." Keanu glanced toward the hallway. "Zane's still resting. We'll run this far, away from him." They packed their things and headed to an abandoned language lab that Amara still had access to on the university campus. It hadn't been used in years, and the dust on the chairs proved it. But the equipment was intact, though dated. They set everything up, scanning the documents and loading the sound patterns embedded in the experimental notes. The first few hours yielded nothing but background data, beeps, hums, static. Then they found it. A 32-second audio clip buried in the test logs under a scrambled file name. When they played it at low volume, even Keanu's body tensed. It wasn't a voice. Not really. It was a sound that flickered between language and noise, like someone whispering in 9 tongues at once, too fast and too deep for the human ear to follow. But the moment it ended, Omar's eyes went wide. That last part, he said, was Swahili. It said, "Answer me." Amara sat back in her chair. They layered languages. They're manipulating brain patterns by combining emotional memory with audio commands. That's why they chose multilingual kids. They respond faster across multiple comprehension zones. Keanu exhaled slowly. They weren't just experimenting. They were looking for something. Omar stared down at the table. And they found it in Zane. There was silence. Then Amara said, "We need to go public with this, not the media, not now, but to someone who can shut them down from inside." Keanu nodded. "I know someone." He made the call from the hallway, an old friend from his film days who had once worked in global communications before becoming a whistleblower on tech surveillance. Her name was Claire. She answered within seconds. "Keanu?" Her voice was sharp, alert. "I need your help," he said, "and it's not about a movie." 2 hours later, Claire met them at the lab. She was in her 40s now, short hair, piercing eyes, and a quiet fury that lived just beneath the surface. After they explained everything, she said, "I've seen this before. Not this exact method, but the intention. They're trying to create predictive emotional triggers, turn language into command codes, military contracts, private intelligence firms. They pay billions for this kind of control." Omar's fists clenched. "And they're testing it on children." "Because they're pure," Claire said flatly. "No filters, no resistance, just raw, honest cognition." Keanu leaned forward. "Can you trace it?" Claire nodded. If you give me the original files in 36 hours, I'll find out where it started, who approved it, and what else they've done. As Claire left with the documents, Omar slumped into a chair. This is bigger than I thought. Keanu sat beside him. I told you, the world needs people like you. Calm voices at the door. But maybe this time, the door needs to be kicked down. That night, they returned to the hospital. Zane had woken up again. His color was better, his voice stronger. Omar hugged him gently, his face pressed into the boy's hair. I missed you, Baba, Zane whispered. Omar smiled. I missed you more. Zane looked past him at Keanu. You didn't leave. Keanu walked over. I told you. I never give up. Zane reached into his backpack and pulled out another folded paper. He handed it to Keanu. I drew something. Keanu opened it. This time the picture showed 3 people, Zane, Omar, and Keanu. They were standing in front of a giant wall with symbols carved into it. Zane held a key. Keanu held a torch. Omar had a shield. Above it were the words, We protect the words. Keanu blinked slowly. Where did you get this idea? Zane pointed to his dreams. They talked to me. The words. They said some people want to break them, but they're not meant to be broken. They're meant to protect people. Omar and Keanu exchanged a long look. Then Zane said one last thing before drifting off to sleep. They're going to come for you, Baba. The ones with the broken words. That night, Omar locked every door and window in his apartment, and at exactly 3:37 a.m., someone cut the power. The silence between the walls, the apartment plunged into darkness so suddenly it felt like the air had collapsed with it. Omar shot up from the living room floor where he'd been half asleep. The quiet was not peaceful. It was too complete. No hum from the refrigerator. No blinking router lights. Not even the soft buzz of the street lamps outside. The building had gone dead. His breath caught in his throat as he turned toward Zane's room. Then came the sound. Soft, deliberate footsteps echoing faintly from the stairwell beyond his door. Not rushed. Not panicked. They were careful. Trained. Whoever it was didn't want to wake the neighbors. But they weren't worried about Omar. He moved fast, silently stepping to Zane's door and cracking it open. The boy was still asleep, curled beneath a superhero blanket, the soft rise and fall of his chest offering a flicker of comfort. Omar closed the door quietly and locked it from the outside, sliding a small wooden wedge under the frame just like his grandfather had taught him during the war years ago. Old habits lived longer than fear. His phone was dead. No power, no reception. He reached for his emergency flashlight but paused. Its click would echo. Instead, he moved to the kitchen, where the faint moonlight through the window gave just enough glow. He opened the drawer, pulled out a small utility knife and gripped it tightly. Then, without knocking, someone tried the front door. First gentle, then firm, then 2 rapid knocks. Omar didn't move. Then came a voice. Mr. Amon, we're from the Department of Education. There's been a breach in your son's school records. We need to speak with you. Omar stayed frozen. The voice tried again. We understand your concern, but refusing to cooperate only puts your child at risk. Omar's grip on the knife tightened. He had heard real voices, honest voices. This wasn't one of them. Then the lock rattled. Someone was trying to pick it. Omar stepped back and raised the knife, but before anything more could happen, a sudden loud crash from the hallway made everyone freeze. A second later, the sound of heavy, fast footsteps thundered away from the door, followed by a voice shouting, "Go, now!" Omar pulled the door open to see 2 men in black tactical gear running down the stairs. And standing at the top landing, out of breath, holding a fire extinguisher in one hand and a broken wooden chair in the other, was Keanu. His hair was wild, his hoodie soaked with sweat and a scrape ran down the side of his cheek. "You okay?" he asked. Omar stood stunned. "What? How?" I got here 5 minutes ago, Keanu said between breaths. Power was already cut. I saw them heading up. One of them was holding a device with your floor plan on it. They were looking for Zane's room. Who were they? Keanu's eyes darkened. Not government, private, trained. Omar opened the door wider. Zane's safe. Good, Keanu said. Because this isn't over. They left within the hour. Amara met them at a safe house on the edge of the city. It was a forgotten building once used by the university to house visiting professors. Now empty, now silent. Claire arrived just after sunrise, her face tight and serious. I traced the symbol, she said, setting down her laptop. You were right. It's not a language. It's a neural key. Something they were developing under a private biotech firm called Nova Word Labs, buried deep under educational charities. They received funding from a group called the Cognition Consortium, investors, with ties to defense contractors. Keanu paced. What do they want from Zane? It's not just him, Claire replied. They're trying to train a generation of children to respond to command layers. If it works, it won't be language anymore. It'll be obedience. Pure, fast, emotional obedience triggered by sound. Omar's face went pale. They're trying to erase free thought. Amara spoke up. They didn't just pick Zane for his multilingual brain. They picked him because he resisted. His reaction to the trigger sound was rejection. His mind tried to protect itself. That makes him dangerous to them. Keanu turned. We have to expose this. Claire nodded. I've already sent copies of the files to 3 safe outlets, but the real evidence, what makes it undeniable, is still inside Nova Word Labs. Omar looked up. You want to break in? Not want to, Claire said. We have to. 2 nights later, they stood in front of a nondescript glass office, in a quiet industrial zone, Nova Word's headquarters. Clean, clinical, fake. Even the receptionist desk was automated. They entered through the parking garage using a code Claire had acquired from a former janitor, who had been laid off after asking too many questions. Inside, the hallways were cold and sterile. Floor-to-ceiling white walls. Low humming lights, no names on the doors, just symbols, like the one they had found on Zane's file. Main servers 2 floors down, Claire whispered, holding a small device in her hand. We have 12 minutes until the internal sweep drones reset. They moved fast. Amara stayed near the top floor to monitor feeds. Omar and Keanu made their way down the stairwell. Each step felt like walking deeper into the mouth of something ancient and wrong. They reached the server room. Claire keyed in a bypass code. The door clicked. Inside, the air was heavy with static. Rows of blinking servers lined the walls. Keanu and Omar scanned the data racks while Claire hooked up her laptop. This is it, she whispered. The original files, the audio layers, even video logs. And look at this, test rooms. Children being exposed to layered commands, their reactions logged frame by frame. Omar's fists clenched. Keanu looked at the screen. One of the clips played automatically. It showed a girl no older than Zane, sitting in a white chair, headphones on. A voice whispered a phrase. The girl blinked slowly. Then, without hesitation, she began crying. Not out of pain, but confusion. Like her heart had been split open and she didn't know why. Turn it off, Keanu said. Claire copied the files. We need to go. Now. Just as they turned to leave, the door behind them slammed shut. Then came the voice. We knew you'd come. A figure stepped into the room, dressed in a white lab coat, eyes sharp, calm. Mr. Reeves, the man said. Mr. Amin, welcome to the future. Omar stepped forward. You did this to my son. The man smiled gently. He's the first to resist fully. But resistance is just another pattern, one we can break. Keanu didn't wait. He lunged. The 2 men collided, slamming into a server stack. The room exploded into chaos, lights flashing, alarms blaring. Omar grabbed Claire's laptop and shouted, Go, now! Keanu punched hard, fast, sharp. The man staggered, hit a wall, and slumped to the floor. They ran. Alarms screamed across the building. Stairwell lights flickered red. Somewhere behind them, metal doors began locking one by one. But they made it out, just as the front windows lit up with approaching vehicles. They disappeared into the night. Back at the safe house, Zane sat curled on the couch, flipping through a notebook of languages. He looked up as Omar entered, and without a word, the boy ran into his arms. "You're safe, Baba." Omar held him close, and for a long time, neither spoke. Then Zane whispered, "They wanted me to forget the words, but I didn't. I remember." "What do you remember?" Omar asked. Zane pointed to his chest. "The one word they don't know." Omar looked at him, confused. "What word is that?" Zane smiled. "Truth." And in that moment, Omar realized something profound. His son didn't just survive the pattern. He broke it. The voice that shattered the code dawn came slowly, pushing thin rays of light across the broken floorboards of the safe house. It was the kind of morning that felt like a promise, but the kind you had to fight to keep. The air outside was still. Birds hadn't returned to their songs yet. It was too early for peace, too late for sleep. Inside, Keanu sat on the front step, elbows resting on his knees, staring at nothing. The events of the past 3 days circled in his head like smoke that wouldn't clear. A child had nearly died. A father had stood between shadows and silence. And the world, busy, loud, distracted, had no idea that somewhere behind tinted glass and smiling institutions, a war had been fought without bullets. Omar stepped out behind him, holding 2 cups of tea. His hands were steady now. Something inside him had shifted, not hardened but grown deeper, like a river that no longer rushed but carried the weight of everything it had passed through. "Zane's awake," Omar said quietly. He asked if you teach him how to fight like in the movies. Keanu smiled for the first time in days. "I'll teach him something better. How to never give up." They sat in silence for a while, sipping tea, listening to the slow stirrings of the city beginning to breathe again. The danger hadn't disappeared. Nova word still existed. The consortium was still out there somewhere, preparing the next step. But now, they had something powerful: truth. Claire and Amara joined them a little later, laptop in hand. Claire looked tired but determined. "The files are out," she said. "Secure servers. Sent to independent watchdogs, humanitarian organizations, even a few brave journalists who still believe in real stories." Keanu nodded. "What happens now?" Amara answered. "What always happens when the world hears what it wasn't supposed. To denial, anger, then slow, painful change." Omar looked toward the small window where Zane was drawing again. "But will it be enough?" Claire sighed. "It's a beginning." Just then, the door creaked open and Zane stepped out, holding up another one of his drawings. "Look," he said. "This time it's all of us." He handed it to his father. It showed Keanu, Omar, Claire, Amara, and Zane, all standing in front of a giant screen. Behind them, words flowed like waves across the sky. Above it all were 3 large letters, in big, bold, colorful strokes. "Say it." Keanu looked down at him. "What does it mean?" Zane shrugged. "I don't know. It just came to me. Like a dream. Like the words were waiting to be said." Omar stared at it. "Say it," he whispered. That's what they were trying to take away. Not just language, but the power to speak, to name, to feel. Amara nodded slowly. "The oldest stories say that what can be named can be fought." Zane smiled wide. "Then I want to learn all the words." Within 2 weeks, the story broke. Not on mainstream news, but in small digital spaces, whispered forums, encrypted messages. A video surfaced, a montage of evidence, sound files, child reaction footage, and testimony, narrated not by Keanu, but by Omar. The video opened with his voice. Calm, slow, powerful. "My name is Omar Amin. I am not a scientist. I am not rich. I am not important by the world's standards. But I am a father, and that is enough." His story played out in layers. Zane's collapse, the mysterious file, the hidden codes, the attempted break-in, the lab, the pattern of obedience. They told me the form I signed was for reading programs. They said it would help my son learn faster. They lied. What they wanted was control. What they used was language. But they didn't understand that language doesn't belong to corporations. It belongs to us, to people, to those who love, those who remember. The video ended with Zane's drawing, the words, "Say it," flashing across the screen. Within hours, it went viral. Parents from around the world came forward with similar experiences, forms they didn't understand, unusual school programs, unexplained health issues in their children. Languages once seen as beauty, now revealed as tools being turned into levers of power. Protests followed. Petitions, emergency reviews of education systems and private research programs. And for the first time in years, the world stopped scrolling, long enough to listen. 3 months later, Omar was invited to speak at an international conference on child ethics in education. It wasn't a stage he had ever imagined standing on. Yet, there he was. Clean suit, rough hands, heart wide open, and beside him in the front row sat Keanu, Amara, Claire, and Zane, smiling quietly with pride. Omar stepped up to the microphone, looked out at the crowd and said, "I used to think that doors were my job. Open, close, repeat, keep the peace, hold the line. But I learned that sometimes the doors we stand in front of are the ones we need to walk through. Not because we want to, but because someone small and precious is standing behind us, waiting to see if we will." The crowd rose to their feet, not out of celebrity, not out of fame, but because they saw a man speak truth. And truth still moved people. That evening, back at the apartment, Zane pulled on his father's sleeve and whispered, "Can I tell you something, Baba?" Omar knelt. "Anything." Zane looked serious. "When I heard the sounds, in the school, the ones that hurt, there was one word that kept me safe." Omar held his breath. "What was it?" Zane leaned in close and whispered something, so softly it took Omar a moment to realize what it was, his own name, Baba. A simple word, the oldest one, the one said by generations of children in 100 different languages. It meant home, safety, truth. And when said from the heart, it was stronger than any machine, any code, any broken pattern. Omar closed his eyes. "I'll always be your Baba." Months passed. The world moved forward. Nova Word was dismantled. But the work wasn't over. Keanu helped fund a new project with Amara and Claire, a language sanctuary program, teaching children not just how to speak, but how to listen, how to protect their minds from manipulation, how to remember the words that matter: truth, love, courage, resistance, kindness. And everywhere they went, from schools to shelters to community centers, they brought one message written on every wall and every tongue: say it. Say what's right. Say what's real. Say it even when your voice shakes and know someone is always listening.